I have been browsing the deepest, darkest webs about Toji's character analysis, and I haven't found a single one highlighting the importance of this character's existence and fight within the main series. I sincerely believe that the author had created this character called Toji for the sole purpose of throwing a monkey wrench into his own power system to make things more complicated, but yet more exciting. The only thing that even comes close to something like this would be something like the Nen system in Hunter x Hunter, but that's to a certain degree. Because I can confidently say in this series, this is a show where the show doesn't hesitate to have the alphas, the omegas, the top dogs of the universe, the extreme powerhouses collide with each other in a death battle to see who would come out the best and whose actions would genuinely affect the history and their respective universe's future. Dragon Ball Z did this to a certain extent, and no other show that I could think of that has that same kind of confidence of throwing massive powerhouses against each other to fight and effectively change the future and have the MC with his moment to shine. We'll talk about all those other characters later, but this is a story about Toji Fushiguro. I'm gonna butcher his name a lot. If I do, I apologize. Please don't roast me in the comment section. The reason for me making this video specifically about Toji is a demon. More specifically, because he doesn't follow any of the rules presented in the universe beforehand. I do want to add a small correction to this, because we have already seen like a potential foreshadowing in Maki, but Toji, my man, takes the absolute extreme of what Maki is supposed to be by throwing hands with everybody that he wanted to, and this guy still won. Manga spoilers for like 10 seconds. This was interestingly confirmed in the manga somewhere. Go read it if you want to know more how. I won't talk about the manga specifics here. I'll only talk about where the anime has currently ended, which is season 2 episode 5. Okay? Long story short, Gojo was handed everything on a silver platter and more, while Toji had to work absolutely hard for everything. But you want to know something here? Gojo could power up a whole country, but couldn't even save one girl. Okay, but let's get more into the specifics about the character. Who is Toji Fushiguro? I'll get into Gojo later. Toji, my main man, my legend, the myth, the legend himself, and the one and only person who gave Gojo his one and only massive L. Not going into manga spoilers, don't even get in there. I'm not even kidding. If Gojo hadn't even discovered his ability to heal last second with the reverse curse technique, we'll get into that later, Toji would have Gojo take a massive L to the tomb. For those who don't know Gojo, he's basically like every insecure 13-year-old's wet dream of being an anime universe god. And everybody who exists worships him, because he's got like infinity plus 2 damage and infinity plus 1 energy, which makes him basically unkillable. I mean, the inspiration for this man's Toji's design is simple but yet super sleek. So good, in fact, Gojo himself stole his fit. Later in the series you'll see this. Tight black shirt, martial arts training pants, kung fu shoes, and a tiny little scar to give fuck you energy. All you need to know about Toji right now is that this man has no cursed energy in a world where everybody else has cursed energy far better than he does. And this includes the small population of the world. And somehow Toji is the alpha dog that somehow stands on top of everybody. In order for most of this to make sense, I shall first explain the power system in which Jujutsu Kaisen uses and exists in. Like Chainsaw Man, these curses are born from the negative emotions and feelings from the population around them. So, the more cursed, or the more something is cursed, the more powerful it becomes. Like the gun devil, or like the chainsaw devil, there exists in Jujutsu Kaisen the volcano curse, the plant curse, the human curse. I wouldn't be surprised if the author for these two shows are very much the same, but the trajectory they take is very different and interesting. And I like how not both, but Jujutsu Kaisen takes an interesting way to introduce the real-life phenomena of 10,000 people going missing without explanation. I mean, the answer is simple. Curses in the show, but like, enough sidetracking. There exists a specific society in the Jujutsu Kaisen universe for people to exercise those curses. And in order to exercise those curses, which cause irreparable damage and harm, you need sorcerer. And quite frankly, Gojo, the character, the god himself, is one extreme of having all the power in the world. He's basically the Superman of the series because of his infinite power. Everybody in the show with cursed energy aspires to be like him, to beat him, or simply existing. But here my man Toji was the only one who could beat him well at the time, and he had no cursed energy. Now how does this work? This all ties back into playing around with the power system, and this is what I meant by a monkey wrench. This man has a heavily restriction where he's not allowed to emit any cursed energy, but because of this, his body is slightly enhanced. And I say slightly, I mean it lightly. Every human in this universe emits cursed energy. Whether they're able to control it or not is a completely different story on its own. But because Toji has heavenly restriction, his body is incapable of producing or outputting any cursed energy. In return, the body and mind are trained exponentially and are more powerful than any average human can achieve. Some of his craziest feats include storing a cursed tools in his gut with a cursed spirit that solely obeys him like a trained pet. My man Geto tried to control Toji's pet. Nah, mate. The pet didn't listen because he knew who the real alpha was, and if he betrayed Toji, he would have been killed. So of course Toji, the true master, just slaughtered Geto and just fucking goodbye. And the craziest thing about this is that Toji didn't even have the strongest tool that he could have used to beat either Gojo or to beat either Geto at the time. He used whatever cursed energy tools he had available to him. I mean, he had 2 OP weapons at once. He wasn't using the best weapon that was available at the time. That's the crazy debate that's going on right now, whether he could defeat the new Gojo with this technique or with this weapon. I'm not going to address that. I'm only here to talk about the story. I'm only about to talk about the massive L this Gojo took, bro. I do want to add, Toji does know millions of mixed martial arts. He is a perfect cunning strategist. He has hidden cursed tools in a pet in his gut. I don't even know how that works. And Toji just simply represents the idea of oneself. We ignore and take for granted with the human body and mind. We ignore the infinite possible things that the human body is capable of achieving, despite it being so limited in its use and features. We make up for it in technique, martial arts, training, and understanding of the mind, and use of all these other senses. And that's what a character like him is supposed to be. And that's why I suppose many of the other characters are learning. I don't want to say mixed martial. I don't want to say he's the reason for the inspiration for learning mixed martial arts. But if you're not confident with your curse technique and you want to throw hands with this man, you're taking a massive L. But Toji, irregardless of circumstances, was set up to go up against Gojo and the crew as the main antagonist. And that's what's the craziest part to me. I'm gonna do a little summary of the entire series, but I'm gonna add a few more details to show what the author was thinking, because all the odds were stacked up against him as he was the underdog subconsciously. We had no idea who or how Gojo was gonna one-shot Toji himself. He was just gonna be another villain. Like I described, Gojo is the Superman of the series. How is this week's villain gonna take an L? Little did we know, Toji comes in frickin' doomsday. But that's the crazy thing. Despite being a muscle man, which was kind of memed towards the start, the first thing Toji does is plan the shit out of his, strategy and fight the crew on an intellectual level. He's not just a hot-headed musclehead going in, charging into a situation to prove he's worth or to make a quick buck. I wonder what I'm talking about. He intentionally was driving Gojo and the crew mad and making them bend to their will and take extra precautions to avoid the bounty that Toji set up. He was always in control, and that's just to further prove his cunning strategy towards the end. Toji took down the bounty and the timer and allowed everybody to step into their safe zone, and then when they felt comfortable the most and dropped their guard, then he striked. This is when everybody's guards would go down and when shit hit the fan. Everybody these days are talking about how this Gojo man's got infinity energy and has got +2 energy. This guy's got complete 0 use energy, and Toji, look at this guy. Look at the amount of fucks he gives. Kind of how much curse energy he's got. If you're wondering why I'm only talking about Toji in reference to Gojo, I will explain all of this later. but I don't want to go into manga spoilers as I've already described where I have limited myself to talk about Toji. His appearance, rather scarce, was rather impactful. It cannot be understated otherwise. And like, I do want to describe his battle with the lobster, but honestly, the fight with the lobster wasn't even a fight. He barely stood up a chance. At best, Toji fought him. The lobster had a massive advantage. He was literally just destroying everybody. Toji jumps into the domain, grabs a weapon, and just goes fighting the lobster head on. Here's the crazy part. That lobster didn't even scratch Toji in his own domain. Okay, like, I should refer to that because that's just a massive, that's not even an L, that's just a slaughter. So I shall refrain talking more about this as it gets more into manga details, but I just want to talk about the importance of just this one battle in the series. Gojo was introduced as the top G, okay? I just want everybody to understand this. The alpha in the series. You want your way, you have to beat him. He's the unstoppable and strongest. Literally, the main antagonist of the first season has been going around left and right, just forward and backwards, just doing everything he can just to corner Gojo into a weird psychological trap and go through this elaborate plan to take him out. Like, if this guy's not taken out of the plan, like, no one can do what they want. That's how invincible Gojo is. Like, the strong guy, you know, everybody's scared of in the series, Gojo beat him. You know the strong guy that used to be the fastest in the series? Gojo beat him. You know the strongest guy that used to be the strongest, then stronger than Gojo beat him? You get the idea. It is because of the actions of Toji and the use of his power and his existence has shifted the landscape of JJK in the series. This is subconsciously put into our heads that even he can lose. Gojo can lose in the right circumstances. I should correct myself. Gojo can lose in the right circumstances. But here's the crazy part. Toji did not just beat Gojo or Geto. He absolutely demolished them. Thinking back, I can't even think the one time that they even landed a solid hit on him. Now, I do want to point out, unlike every other villain, quote-unquote villain in the series, most villains don't get usually a fair treatment, or they're not given much screen time to be evaluated. I mean, Toji, he is a character that was hurting from that time, where his own community and society didn't like him or want him. It hurt the most because it was his own family. We're shown that he doesn't care about it all, and he's super scary and stoic about it, but honestly, he really cares. I mean, he left his family household and started his own little family far away from the clan. Secretly, he kinda did care. I mean, he was caring for at least one of his kids to be born with a proper curse technique. And ironically, he was cursed with a useless body, not of his own doing. He just didn't want his children to go through the same fate. He could never escape the hell he was in, and that constantly haunted him. I think the main point is even someone like him couldn't do it all, and I just love that. I don't love that in a character, I just love that it's pointed out. With all his planning, attack strategies, perfect curse tools to deal with Gojo, Toji still lost. It reminds me a lot of the Gaara versus the Rock Lee fight, where Rock Lee, the underdog, who was going up against everything, put up a good fight. He gave it his all. He put up all this hard work. He was sacrificing everything a whole lot more than anyone in the goddamn room. But in the end, someone like Toji, like Rock Lee, lost regardless. And worst of all, to someone who was born with a massive unfair advantage, like Gaara or Gojo. Toji wasn't so lucky as this loss costed him his whole life, unlike Rock Lee, but I mean, it's really a little sad that we know most. It's worth pointing out that his own pride, directly stated by like the manga itself, is the result for his direct loss and his loss of life. I think there's something truly sympathetic about that. I think the author was trying to imply, under normal circumstances, Toji wouldn't have lost and simply fled because he achieved his mission. I think it's his pride of trying to prove that he is the best and he's the strongest, which is what ultimately costed him, despite knowing he was going to take an L here. That's the interesting part about all this. I wonder why the author pointed that out. I think Toji had potential to grow. As the audience, we still wanted to believe that, and that's what the author was trying to refer to. I find that truly fascinating. We know most about him through his hype battle, and that he managed to beat Gojo before Gojo awakened for the first time, and then can continue to do so. Like, this is the first time we see Gojo come out of his like first womb larva state, and it's Gojo that has only been pushed because of Toji being such a strong character, or such a strong antagonist. It just speaks volume to how strong he is, but in the end, as much as we like to say that he effectively changed the trajectory of like the story, he didn't really change what he wanted to change, the trajectory of his family. A cruel question to ask, was he always cursed to this fate? I feel like with a character like Gojo can literally just keep one-upping every other character, just with the 6 eyes, the infinite limitless technique, simple domain, falling emotion bloom, or whatever the hell it's called. Like, he's just pulling this out of his ass and he could figure it out almost immediately. Well, Toji, on the other hand, maxed out a long time ago. Everything else was to make up for the difference. I'm not going to speculate about Prime Gojo and Prime Toji with like every curse tool he has at his disposal. That's not for me to decide. I mean, Maki's to decide and show us how hard it is. And I find it hard for anyone to support this version of Toji versus Limitless Gojo. I mean, quite literally, we have that scene where he just one-shots him. But we'll see. The sad truth is, this is Gojo's flashback. Okay, anime rules. He never stood a chance. I believe the author made this character as a reference point for a solution for the JJK Academy, but also for the sole purpose of motivating Gojo to do better and to come out of his larva cursed womb state. I'm literally going to say that. But at the end of everything, moments before death, it's kind of bittersweet that a mass murderer is thinking about his child moments before his death, wishing that his birth could take everyone that they were in the hell that they were in. I think Toji regrets he couldn't escape nor destroy it, despite quote-unquote calling himself a sorcerer killer or the strongest. Honestly, I believe the previous head was responsible for like Toji's upbringing and his inability to change anything. I find it interesting that Maki came and destroyed everything immediately after the head died, which was just coincidental timing, but I'm not going to speculate more on that. That's just plausible speculation at best. I would love to know if a guy like Toji could pull off the Black Flash, but I hate ending it off on a somber note, but like, legitimately, I love the character Toji. He was short, simple, sweet, straight to the point, and his impact were perfect. I wish I could have talked more about all these things, but that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye. Subscribe.